Why does your rent go up every year, even when your building sits half empty? Tokyo has 37 million people, subway access everywhere, and a two-bedroom apartment for $900 a month. That price has barely moved in 30 years. New York, London, San Francisco, same decades, rents doubled or tripled in real terms. Tokyo is not poorer, GDP per capita is comparable. The difference is not geography or culture, it is a policy choice. Between 2020 and 2022, US rents rose 30% nationally. In Austin, median rent jumped from $1,100 to $1,800 in 3 years. Landlords called it market forces. But here's the strange part. Remote work had emptied downtown offices. Demand signals were mixed. Rents kept climbing anyway. Then, in late 2023, Austin rents fell. One of the only major US cities where that happened. What changed? Not the economy, not wages. Austin simply built a lot of apartments. That one fact cracks open the whole system. Because if supply can bring rents down in Austin, why does almost every other American city refuse to let it happen? The answer is not greed. It is architecture, legal, political, and economic, that nobody with power has any reason to dismantle. The lock has two tumblers. The first is zoning. Approximately 75% of residential land in most major US cities is legally zoned for single-family homes only. In Los Angeles, that figure is 75%. In San Jose, 79%. On that land, it is illegal to build an apartment, a duplex, or a mixed-use building, regardless of how many people need housing there. This is not a land shortage. It is a legal prohibition on density. The second tumbler is political. Homeowners vote in local elections at 2 to 3 times the rate of renters. Between 2012 and 2022, the median U.S. homeowner gained roughly $150,000 in home equity. Every new apartment building proposed nearby is a potential threat to that number, so homeowners show up to zoning meetings. Renters, who are mobile and diffuse, mostly do not. The result is a feedback loop. Restricted supply raises prices, which creates wealthier and more politically active homeowners, who then restrict supply further. This is not a conspiracy. It is rational behavior producing an irrational collective outcome. Zoning codes read like technical documents. What they actually encode is a transfer of wealth, from every renter paying above market rent to every existing homeowner whose property appreciates because apartments were never allowed next door. At this point, rent control feels obvious. If landlords are charging too much, cap the price. And the instinct is not wrong. It identifies a real problem. But a 2019 Stanford study by economists Diamond, McQuaid, and Chen tested exactly this, using San Francisco as a natural experiment. In 1994, a ballot measure extended rent control to small landlords, buildings with 4 or fewer units, built before 1980. The economists compared landlords just above and just below the eligibility threshold to isolate the effect. What they found: tenants in rent-controlled units saved roughly $2,300 per year, real protection, real money, but those same landlords responded by converting 15% of their controlled units into condos or redeveloping properties entirely, permanently removing them from the rental market. The net effect on the city: rental supply fell 15% and citywide rents rose 5 to 7%. Rent control protected the specific tenants who already had leases. It taxed everyone who would need to rent in the future. The mechanism is precise. Rent control is a tenant protection policy that gets misidentified as a housing supply policy. Those are different problems. Confusing them produces a policy that solves one while worsening the other. The 182 US cities with rent control are not building their way out of the shortage. They are managing the symptoms of a disease they are not treating. 2 cases prove the lock is not permanent, just political. Tokyo first. Japan's national government controls zoning, which means local homeowners cannot veto new construction. The city has 13 zoning categories explicitly permitting high-density mixed-use development. In 2018 alone, Tokyo permitted 131,000 new housing units, more than the entire state of California, which permitted roughly 110,000 that same year for a comparable population. Tokyo's real rents have been flat since the 1990s. That is not an accident. It is what happens when supply is legally permitted to respond to demand. Now, Austin. Between 2021 and 2023, Austin approved roughly 15,000 to 20,000 new apartment units per year, one of the highest per capita construction rates in the country. By early 2024, Austin rents were down 5 to 10% year over year. Landlords were offering 2 months free rent to fill units. In the same period, Miami and New York, where permitting remained constrained, continued rising. The mechanism is identical in both cases. When the political block on supply is removed, basic construction economics reasserts itself. Developers compete. Vacancy rises. Landlords concede on price. Rent goes down. This is not theory. It happened in the same country, in the same economic cycle, in cities that made different policy choices. Here is the model in one sentence. Rent is high where politically organized homeowners have used zoning to make supply illegal. And the fix is not price controls on the output, but permission reform on the input. 3 questions diagnose any city. 1. What share of residential land allows multifamily housing? Below 50% is a red flag. 2. Does the state or local government control zoning? State preemption, like Japan's national system or Minnesota's 2019 reform, breaks the local veto. 3. Is the city permitting more or fewer units than its population growth requires? If fewer, rents will rise. The ratchet only clicks one direction until the supply valve opens. Austin 2023 is not a miracle. It is what cities look like when they stop making apartments illegal. Rent goes down when politicians let it. That is the entire story. If this changed how you see housing policy, subscribe. We cover the hidden systems behind everyday costs every week.